Meka Saite Pikisineka. Welcome everybody, Saradabeka Saraninia Meka, to a wonderful new episode, Saradabeka Saraninia Ki. This episode is actually really special and it's not something that I'm leading. It's an interview from Exploring Consciousness Through Conversation with Nick the Zwart. And he's an amazing brother. I will put all his information at the bottom and all the information because he does really awesome conversations with amazing people. So I totally recommend to check out all the conversations and see what that brings up in you, see what it activates. So really hope you enjoy this beautiful episode. Blessings, blessings, and blessings. Awesome. Thank you for having me here.
No, thank you. The pleasure's all mine.
Yeah.
So it's just I've pressed record. So anything you say or do can and will be used against you from here forward because it's recorded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for anyone tuning in, jumping on the live or maybe watching on the replay, this is Rukmani, and she's a new friend who actually I was reflecting on it the other day. I have met so many fabulous people via Instagram, and without that platform, as much as people want to demonize social media and things like that, it has. I certainly wouldn't be sitting here today doing any of this if it wasn't for Instagram, actually. So, yeah, it's a magical platform. But thank you for coming on. And I guess we're going to learn a little bit about what you do because I dove into your podcast last night.
Oh,
I think I listened to about 5 episodes, and I know it sounds, but I genuinely like it's brilliant. It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I love your intro too. I feel like I need an intro now.
Honestly, I received like many messages years ago to start a podcast, and I started one. It was just sharing my journey, but it wasn't something to put so much content for people. And through my Kundalini awakening, it was just like I gotta share something. Like for me, like the first 5 years of it was super challenging. And even like the first 3, I didn't have any guidance at all. Like I think with a physical person, all the guidance was energetics and really trusting my shadows. And that's how I became very good at shadow work and something that I find so fascinating. And so, yeah, last year, on the spring equinox in this part of the world anyway, I launched it and it's been like really amazing, very fun too.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like talking about the Kundalini awakening and things like that. I've got a dear friend, and I'll be sending this off to her later on because she went through her whole experience and literally on her own, like she had no idea what was happening. So through her, I understand how important like what you're doing is.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, yeah, for sure. I'm not taking away from how challenging the journey is, but it's also so beautiful. I'm I'm fascinated by the journey, and this is also why I do what I do. Not only to help others, but it's just so amazing how intelligent our systems are. And so if we really get to tune in with the energetics and listen to the language of every single part of our being, then it's so much easier to maneuver through that space. And then life becomes so magical. And this is something that I didn't grow up like this. I was very intuitive since a really young age, and I was seeing many different like beings around too, but it wasn't something that my parents taught me. And it was actually seen in my family, from my family, as like, okay, this is really weird. These people are not normal, stay away from them. And so like I shut everything down until it happened when I was doing my first Kundalini Yoga teacher training. And I went to my teacher and I said, so this happened. Because when it happened, honestly, like I didn't really know what was happening. Like we talked a little bit about in teacher training, but it was something like, yeah, some people experience this. It wasn't really in depth. And when mine showed up, like everything in my spine burned, and then my body was moving like a serpent, and then I was feeling the masculine of the energy, the masculine of the feminine energies moving and merging at each chakra. And then just like my hearing expanded, and I was listening to some friends talking about me, and then also seeing different things about me, and it was just like, in a way, I was in shock and at awe at what was going on because I had no control over it. And it was, I became the seer, you know, like the observer, just watching my body and my being coming back alive or online, you know. And then afterwards, I passed out. And for 2 weeks, like my spine was so sensitive. My partner at the moment, he tried to massage my spine, and just by literally barely touching me, it was just like it was too much. Like I couldn't deal with that, so couldn't really do much for 2 weeks after that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, how does that work? Because like literally, you go into. I mean, for you, it was a that Kundalini Yoga,
Yeah.
and I just wonder. Like, I have no experience with this.
Mhm.
How do you go have something like that happen in literally in the blink of an eye? Really, I mean, it's obviously an
Yeah.
ongoing process, but when that
Yeah.
moment hits, how do you then start to? How do you walk out afterwards and sort of be normal,
Oh,
whatever that is?
oh, you know, so already teaching my senses like super expanded, and I began to see even more things, you know, what we call like demons or also deities that will just show up and appear. And because my teacher was kind of like, it was also his first teacher training, you know, of leading it, so I'm sure he was like, whoa, what are you doing? What I did do though was that I smoked some marijuana, because like in traditionally in Kundalini Yoga, it's seen as a drug. And for me, it wasn't a drug because it really like saved me during like a really deep depression that I was going through,
Mm,
like years prior to that. So I kept hearing the plant telling me like, come, like I gotta show you something. But because I was conditioned during the teacher training, there was a drug. I was like, I have to stay away from you. Until like I talked to a friend, and a friend's like, you know, that's what he believes, but it's whatever it is that you believe, you know. So that night, like I heard the plant, and I said, okay, you know, let's do it. And so that happened. And afterwards was, no lie, a struggle, a really big struggle, because I felt like inside of me there was just like so many parts. Also that deeper part of me that's super trusted, because in Kundalini Yoga there's many kriyas. You know, kriyas is almost like, it could either be a set of exercises, meditation and breath work, or it could be like one very deep meditation. And
mm,
so there's one that is called Raise Your Kundalini, and I was doing that one. I did that one for a few months on top of everything that we were doing with the teacher training. So in Kundalini Yoga, there's many different techniques, and the point of it really is to raise the Kundalini energy. But I wasn't really taught that at that moment, you know. So I was just curious. I was like, okay, well, what is this Kundalini energy? Let me try this out. And next thing I know, it happened. Yeah.
How, and with like when it comes to Kundalini Yoga, how do you? I'm interested in how you go from um, because you want to be surrendered to the process. I'm imagining, right? You don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
trying to attain anything, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I mean, you hear the term Kundalini and things like that, and people want to naturally humans want to grab at it, and I'm going to go and get one of those, you know, and get the certificate that comes with it or whatever. But what do you think it happened for you because you were surrendered to the process? Oh, sorry, you there? I just I just lost
Yeah,
you for a sec.
I hear you now. Yeah.
You hear me now? Yeah, I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on. It's a bit weird. We'll persevere anyway. But yeah, but I don't know how far I got, but like I hear the term Kundalini Yoga, and it's like, okay, so this is the point we want to get to. We want to release that Kundalini,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
how do you go from? Do you think maybe like were you were obviously somewhat ignorant of what that was just because you hadn't experienced it fully? Were you surrendered to the process and not sort of chasing, trying to attain that thing,
I
or was
think
it
I
something
lost you.
that you were trying to get to?
I think, and this is of course from like the experience so far and trusting my intuition, that my intuitive nature just said, we gotta go for this, you know? And so then I was like, okay, let's go
Mm,
for it. And had it not been for the Kundalini awakening, I wouldn't really trust as deep as I trust right now,
mm,
because I couldn't hold on to something physical. You know, it was all like internal experiences, and then also like my body started to get into deep trances that it was just like I will go away. You know, I was very aware of what was happening, but it was like the pure consciousness was coming forth, and who I believed I was behind the scenes watching everything. And my body started to getting into trances, like my arms were being pulled backwards and getting into
wow.
back bends, and like just like all these like kinds of experiences, you know. And I didn't have anybody to talk about these things, you know. I didn't know anybody back then, and so instead of like telling people and reaching out to people, because for me it was really nuts, literally, I just had to trust me, and
Mm,
I trusted the energies, and I really trusted Kundalini Yoga. Honestly, that was my foundation, because like that was the one thing that opened me up, and that was the one thing that kept me sane. Because part of the technology of Kundalini Yoga is like it helps you to put your system into balance. So the mind, you know, the emotions, like the entire like energetics, the physical body is going into balance. Had I not had that, I don't even know, because I that was the one thing that I dedicated, is like every single morning you're doing this. It doesn't
mm,
matter what you feel like. And the mantras helped me so much, because there were many moments, especially the first 2 years, where I will go to my altar and collapse on my knees, just asking for some kind of guidance. And I will say, like, show me a presence, you know, just show me a presence to know that I'm not going crazy. And details will just appear, honestly, and I will
wow.
feel them by my feet or by my hands, you know, and I'm like, okay, cool. So that was like my journey of like fully trusting, and trusting what, you know, for other people and for me too at the beginning of my life was like completely craziness. And yeah, like I said, had I not been for that, I wouldn't trust my work right now,
Mm.
because it's fully guided. It's like 1,000% intuition what I do, you know?
And then that sort of leads to the question, because obviously that exact same thing's contained within all of us.
Hmm.
And then I start to think of, because it's always hard to sort of say that there's a one size fits all for anything, but is there a point where this potentially should become something that everyone begins to integrate in their life? Because I can only imagine that if we had 7-8 billion humans running around with their Kundalini awoken, it'd probably be a pretty grouse planet.
Yeah, I I definitely believe that anybody has the ability to awaken it, because I mean, why else would it be within our system if it's not to use it?
Mm,
And it really depends also from the ones mine was really intense, just because to because had it been just like, you know, very fluffy and like
mm,
butterflies and rainbow, I couldn't really understand somebody's journey. And there is this sound healing called inner dance. I don't know if you're familiar with that, because it's big in Australia too.
yeah.
Have you heard about it?
The term sounds familiar, but
Yeah.
that's the extent of it.
So it's like a sound healing journey. Is
Yep.
and dreaming.
Mm,
Community is their work really is to help people awaken their Kundalini story, but our story. You know what happened before and learn through these experiences because I did like what some people might call teacher training Buddhist and immersions. They one of the girls who has been doing this for 10 years told me her name is Serena and she's actually the mastermind behind the inner dance music. Serena told me that when somebody's Kundalini awakening is really intense, normally it tends to be because they come from a society or a culture that has been colonized. So, for example, I was born and raised in Peru. Very similar happens with people from the Philippines, because she's been traveling all around the world, witnessing awakenings, and so it's really interesting when we go so deep into that. Part of my awakening was to release the trauma that happened in the land of Peru with the Incas. I'm
mm,
not sure if you're very familiar with that, but
sure.
when the Spanish came into the land into South America, because the Inca de Tahuantinsuyo, it wasn't just in Peru, it was like Peru, Colombia, a little bit of Ecuador, Chile, Bolivia, and so there was a destruction that happened. Most of like the native like culture and language really was destroyed. And it's something that I wasn't taught in school. That I was
Mm,
told that they came and all these amazing things happened, but through the awakening, I saw the destruction and I saw like women being murdered, but also raped, like children being killed, like so many fires, and I understood the pain that the land carries. And as I was able to do that too, I was able to tune in more into, the wisdom of the land, the wisdom of my ancestors, which is also yours, it's our
mm,
ancestors, like everything that happened, because there's so much correlation from, South America and the Philippines and that area of Asia. So it's something so beautiful, I believe, based on, of course, my story and the people that I've been helping too. And it's a gift to have it. I feel that it's our birthright, honestly, to
mm,
awaken it. But of course, it just really depends of like what is coded. Perhaps at the beginning of my journey, created suffering.
mm. Yeah, I don't know. You probably can't hear me just this second. It'll come back in a tick. Can you hear me?
I got you.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. It just keeps dropping out here and there, but I got you. And that's interesting because you actually said there, and that answered it in a nutshell, that it's our birthright
Mm-hmm.
to have to get that. And it's interesting too that you talk about, because this is something that I'll ponder later on. My wife's Indigenous from here in Australia, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of sort of trauma from colonization and stuff like that, and I see it manifesting in a lot of that community and things like that.
Yeah,
And one thing I never hear them talk about is this sort of thing either, which would be interesting because I'm sure they probably have their own practice for getting
for
that
sure.
release. Because do you find that? Have you found that there's Kundalini, and we normally associate that with a particular tradition? Do you find that, like, Peru, for instance, would have their own version of that, or not really?
Well, there is like the tradition, like, on shamanism and the
Mm,
elders to really awaken. It's not really called Kundalini, but it's to awaken our potential.
yeah.
And that is like, it's all throughout the Amazon, because my part of my family from my dad's side is from like the rainforest. So
Hmm.
that's all like there too. But at the same time, there's also like the suffering because for years, now it's a little bit different, but for years, anybody that was from the rainforest or for what we call Sierra, which is the mountains, it
Mhm.
was like it was seen as very low, as a very low society, very low people. And so only the ones that lived in Lima, which is the capital, and they had like money, were seen as like the white people. They had all the power. So for like Quechua, which is like the main traditional language, almost got lost in the country because it was almost like an outsider, even though it really carries so much of the wisdom of like all the ancestors, you know. But so in the tradition, it's really just connecting with the land, using the plant medicine like master plants, you know, like ayahuasca, for example,
Mhm.
to bring up that in us, and it's also an honor to do it. It's not just to do it just to do it, you know, like connecting with the plant is something very divine in our culture,
Mhm.
which is I'm sure that it is in many other cultures all around the world. But it's I definitely do believe that ancestors and like you know those ancient cultures do access that, and they might not call it Kundalini like in Peru.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you have going to the ayahuasca thing, and this is leading to
Hmm.
something else. Have you ever had experience with that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. And was
I
that
love
prior
that
to,
plant.
yeah. And was that prior um
The
to your
awakening.
Kundalini? Yeah.
No,
No.
no, that was right after. And I didn't even know, you know. So I grew up with my family telling me and my brother that ayahuasca was a drug and that people die from it. So I
Mm.
was almost kind of traumatized by that. But upon like the awakening happened in 2016, and then I had this call to go back to Peru and learn about herbs because then I just like I wanted to know and be more in touch with that culture. And very beautiful. And then I did more because my boyfriend and I lived very painful, but amazing.
Yeah.
And then I mean I have so much love for that plant,
Mm.
honestly, because I know in other lifetimes like I've worked with her, like I can feel it in me. You know, there's people that like say like, "Oh, it tastes so gross and it smells so gross," and I love how it tastes and I
Yeah.
love how it smells.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful because I also like I was sort of leading into, like you've had the Kundalini and you've obviously had experience with that, and you talk about the difference between your experience with ayahuasca and other people's, even in terms of just taste and those sensory sort of things. And I feel like there's something important in the fact that you're like you're not that far removed from that cultural connection in
Hmm.
terms of years. Whereas you look at someone from Europe, with Dutch ancestry and things like that, we, we're talking about thousands of years removed from
Yeah.
that central part of existence and connection to
Yeah.
earth and the plants and all that sort of thing. So it
Hmm.
feels a little bit like, um, I don't want to say it's easier for you to connect to all that, because
Mm.
I know you've had like your story is quite harrowing, because I listened to one of the podcasts you did. I don't know when it was, but recently it was one I listened to about 4 or 5, so it was somewhere within that batch, and you were talking about how tough your journey had been.
Yeah.
So I don't want to diminish it, but then
Yeah.
it feels to me unsurprising that when there's probably people that do Kundalini yoga for 10 years and don't have the experience you had, you've sort of had it. I feel like it's that
Yeah.
ancestral
Sure.
connect. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that I mean it's in my blood, you know,
Yeah.
for sure. Like I said, part of my family is from the rainforest and like
Mm.
and they're so connected with the land. It's amazing how connected they are with the land, you know. And both of my families, my mom and my dad, they were farmers, so we had like farms in different parts of the country, and just like it's been in me, you know, this
Yeah.
connection. And but I never really knew about it, or I was I wasn't really aware of it until like the Kundalini awakening happened. And it was almost like the remembrance just came like this, honestly. The
Mm.
connection with the earth just like, because I
Mm.
remember being like very connected with the earth when I was really young and we will go to the farm. But then there was a point where I got very scared of nature, and it was when I was like getting so much information of school, you know. So in school, like I went to an Italian school in Lima, so it was very strict and so many different classes, and so I wanted to be like one of those rich people from my school, because a lot of the people that were there were very educated, and as well as like really big corporation. And so it was a really big challenge to connect back with nature because it scared me so much. But because it scared me, you know, it was a really big shift that happened once all these distractions that were in my body began to crack open.
Mm.
And it's been very beautiful to remember that. And honestly, one of my most amazing dear guides is my grandma, the one that was born in the
Wow.
rainforest.
Yeah.
And she has appeared to me. She has been guiding me through many things, and to break ancestral trauma too from her lineage, you know. So, like, she's, oh my gosh, like honestly, like the greatest. So
Beautiful.
I am
Yeah.
so grateful to have chosen a grandma like her, honestly.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then I want to ask you about because I was writing the little spiel that you write for the post and stuff like that, and I was looking at how you referred to the work you do, and you spoke about we
Mm.
and how you work with Ganesh. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit to that? Because I mean, particularly sitting here in Australia or a Western country, we always hear about, people will talk about Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, but I've not really heard too much about Ganesh and working with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So last year I went through this very dark awakening, when we were after Peru, we moved to Colombia, and that's when the lockdown and all that thing happened. So after that, we chose to come back to the States just to be closer with some family. And I was staying with my parents. My parents live in Las Vegas. Las Vegas has so much energy, and so yeah, like my channels were honestly like closing little by little. And I met this amazing oracle. Well, this is what I call her anyway.
Yep.
She sees your guys and she tells you the messages of them. So she told me I cannot be in a bigger city because my channels get closed with all the information. And then one other thing she said like, there's a deity that wants to come and work with you. And she was like, gosh, something like this, you know? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, yeah. So get out of electronics, lit up a candle, and begin to work with this being. And I was trying so hard to do it honestly last year, and it wasn't really working out. It wasn't really working out because I was forcing it until I did a hair ceremony, probably in November or September. And so after that, I released like this core that was the self-sabotaging pattern that I had, because I definitely had a self-sabotaging pattern almost my entire life.
Mhm.
That was still keeping me in the same loop of my old life before I left Las Vegas and I just expanded. And through that I began to hear Ganesh, and it just guiding me, honestly. And it was really interesting because before I was working with another being, and then all of a sudden it stopped talking. And so Ganesh, it just talks through me. Like when I do live videos, honestly, I don't even know what I'm gonna say. And
Yeah.
so I just sit there, and there's all these teachings and information that comes through that it is just like I'm honestly really surprised at times,
Yeah.
and I'm just like afterwards I have to like chill for a second because I'm vibrating so strongly. But
Yeah.
it is kind of like hearing like this wonderful whisper in the form of energy,
Wow.
because energetically speaking, like there is no voice in energy, right? It's vibration, so it in a way has to be somewhat translated in my system to understand what is coming through. And so it's as the energy comes, like, it gets translated into whatever language that I'm speaking, and that is the trust that allows that flow of energy to come through for myself and for others. And so at times I'm just there and I'm listening. I'm there and I hear like you and I are talking, and then sometimes it shows me visions, or like it shows me um, different plans to use and how to use them. It's just so magical. It's very magical to work with a DT and to
Yeah.
with any being, honestly.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I have a question. So, in some of your videos, are you using another language, or is that light language or something? Hang on. There we are. We're back. You
Yeah.
can hear me now.
Yeah.
Um, in your I've in your videos, I've seen at least some of them where you're sort of transitioning between English and something else. Is that another language, or is that something like light language?
Yeah, light language.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
meant to ask. Cool. So how does the light language relate? Does that relate to Ganesh and all that sort of stuff? Where does that come in? Like,
Yeah, Thailand. I was living in Copenhagen, and I woke up one day through in the middle of the night, and my tongue was literally being pulled in different directions. Like I could see somebody was just like, and I remember like waking up and just going like around like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to let it do its thing. And then the same day later on, it came through, and it came through during a healing session that I was doing with my current boyfriend, and it was just totally channeled. And I remember thinking about the same thing, that I wasn't even there. The energies just came through, and I was doing the healing session, and then bloop, something like. Then I became very curious about it because it felt so me, and like I was remembering something, and I began to talk to like nature and animals in the language, and I began to do healing sessions for friends that with it that was so powerful, and they were like, what in the world are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, it just comes out and it wants to come out. So I was very hesitant at the beginning because it was so weird, and especially because I channeled to my mom in that
Mhm.
language, and I saw her eyes going into like super fear mode, and I was like, oh shoot, what did I just do? Like it was very scary to see her that way.
Yeah.
But then afterwards I realized it's not my gift, it's
Mm.
our gift. Who am I to keep that away from others if it wants to like be transmitted to
Mhm.
somebody else? And it's part of like what I chose to do, to just be a channel, a pure channel of like divine energy. So if it wants to come through for somebody, I let it come through,
Yeah.
and of course, like if there's I'm pretty good at doing of asking permission for people that I don't know in a way. Because sometimes I'm like going somewhere and there's this message that comes through for somebody else, and I'm like, I don't even know this person, but let me ask them if they're willing to receive this message, and then I do it. But light language has transformed my life,
Mm.
and also my throat chakra. It just expanded my throat. It has been healing my throat in ways that I didn't even know was possible. So I just let it do its thing.
That takes a lot of courage, though. Like, that's to because if I suddenly started talking like that and turned up to mum and dad's house and started doing it, they'd have a pretty nasty reaction too. They'd have me committed. But so it takes a fair bit of courage to just go, no, you know what? This isn't I'm not going to pick and choose. This is, if it needs to come out, it needs to come out. So I really admire that. I think you've frozen again. I don't know if you can hear me. Just give it a sec. It'll come back. There we are. You're back. Yeah. But that takes a lot of courage, because even now, like, it's funny because like my family don't even know that I do these podcasts. I just kind of do my thing in the background, and I mean, it doesn't matter. But yeah. Oh, and we've got your friend arrived back. The new puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you do a bit of I did notice too, and this really stood out for me because I'm working on something at the moment which is kind of like a social enterprise type deal. And I did pick up, there was this moment in one of your podcasts where you're talking and you spoke about doing some not-for-profit.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word not-for-profit, and was that was related to people who can't afford the Kundalini?
Yeah.
I love this stuff because I'm on this sort of junket at the moment where it's like giving more than you get, and sort of just giving, and this reciprocal cycle of giving and receiving, and it will automatically come. But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that not-for-profit
For
part of it?
sure. So, part of my journey, of course, it was healing that the money code. And there were some moments where we didn't really have money to pay rent. There was a moment where we didn't have, and we were living in Colombia. Oh baby,
wow.
stop, come here. Everybody else can see you too. Come.
Yeah, there we are.
Come on. There you go. Relax, baby. Okay. So, we were living in Colombia, right? And Colombia is very cheap, honestly, when you have dollars, when you have euros and stuff. And so there were moments where we had to be very careful on what we bought to eat, and had to figure out how in the world to pay rent. And even rent wasn't that expensive. Message nonprofit organization for people that are going through the Kundalini awakening, and teach them about meditation, teach them about energy work, teach them about money, teach them just in general. And I was like, yeah, for sure. And I just kind of let that come, so I was just like, all right, I'm gonna wait for the right opportunity for this. And so there is this contest called Yoga Warrior that I signed up for it, and then the winner gets to be featured in Yoga Journal, and it wins $10,000. So I was like, my guides were like, sign up, and I was like, okay. And so I signed up for it, and that's my goal, with the $10,000 to set up a nonprofit organization to help, especially those that don't have any means, because again, I didn't have anything at that moment. Had I had somebody come and be like, don't even worry about it, let me guide you, let me, who knows, in a way somewhat train you, so then you can really thrive and not worry about all these human things that we have to do, but worry about just your process itself. Because my ex used to tell me that Kundalini awakening was a full-time job. And, it really is, so I was very blessed that the work that I do, it's part of my work anyway. So I don't have to go somewhere else from 8 hours a day to work on something. So I have the time and the space to let my process do whatever it wants to do. But other people might not. other people might not even know they're going through that.
Yeah.
And then like sometimes, you know, paying money to somebody that you don't even know how they can help you can just be very scary too, or just reaching out to somebody. So yeah, that's my goal with that, you know. And of course, you know, there's this thing that I might not win it, but it doesn't even matter if I win it or not, because regardless, it's being set up.
Yeah.
It's being set up, and it's gonna help others, and that's it. That's what matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, and sometimes it's just the prompt to sort of set the intention that that's what's going to
Yeah,
happen, so that nonprofit's going to come to fruition.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just as soon as I heard you say that, it was like so synchronous because like I've got a whole thing on the side getting put together, and basically I want to start like I'm thinking a global brand,
Mm.
and but develop into a social enterprise where we start lifting up people like you know, where we can
Uh-huh.
give you a bigger audience, use advertising dollars to subsidize rather than say
Mm.
and pay an advertising company. You're paying money to cover the cost so that people who can't afford your services can have it subsidized for them and things like that.
That's
Like there's just
amazing.
endless
Wow.
range of stuff. And even here, like you talked about the meditation stuff, like I'm
Hmm.
starting to look for venues and stuff to start facilitating just the introduction to meditation, because
Wow.
I'm heavily into the fitness industry. I like a little bit of bodybuilding, like, you know, like, which
Hmm.
is a bit of contrast to all this, but it's how I play the game. And getting some of these people that are in the gym working out because they're trying to fill other voids, to
Yeah.
start to little triggers and little sparks and things like that.
Wow. That's
So it
amazing.
yeah, so it totally resonated, and when I was listening to, I'm like, this is my type of person. I was just like, yeah, you know, like
Yay.
you get the heart opens, you know, and you're just like, wow, this is fantastic. So it's no accident that we got in touch recently, and and yeah, I'm gonna wait. There you are. Yeah,
Patience.
yeah. Um.
Mm.
So and obviously, like you're living your life with right on purpose. Is that
Mm,
is that where you're at?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's Do you feel like everything that happened to you in the past was designed to get you to where you are now? You got me?
I got you now.
Yeah. So do you feel like, so like, and I encourage anyone to go back and listen to your podcast and understand your story a bit more in depth, because there was a beautifully emotional podcast that where you expressed your life prior to
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Do you feel like that was all designed to get you to this point though? Because you know, you have skills, and you can relate to people in a different way, and I like to think that a lot of my struggles in the past have led to this moment,
Mm.
and all that's going to happen and are perfectly orchestrated.
Yeah, 1000%, honestly. I mean, when I look back at my life, honestly, I'm so grateful for every single dark moment that I've had,
Yeah.
for all the struggles, for all the self-sabotaging patterns. Like, I'm so grateful, and I wouldn't change it at all, because it's made me who I am, you know? The strength that I have, the compassion that I have, the love that I have is because I totally wanted to kill myself.
Mm.
And I went through all those kinds of things, and it was beyond challenging. I cannot even tell you how challenging it was, but had I not gone through that, I wouldn't love myself the way that I do now.
Yeah.
There's so many people, but also like my family, the way that they see my family with different eyes,
Mm.
because of all the healing that I've done over lineage. And I really, based on, of course, my work and my story, I believe that our shadows are one of the most important parts of us. And if we let them speak, that they really will show us a way, and the way is back to our gifts. The way is back to our truth, and it's powerful. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That actually that really resonates. That yeah. And it's interesting because me too, I feel like I'm very much beginning to reorient myself after, like I went through my awakening experience 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
And I've sort of dove into that world. And now I'm returning to the previous world, but from a different perspective. And I'm now starting to play and create from that. And and like you say, those insecurities, those dark spots are the greatest challenges, are actually the greatest gifts, and they truly, truly are.
Because yes, I mean,
Yeah.
I have the ability to just sit with my shadows and listen. And I know that for some people it's very scary. But I mean, for me, it's the one thing, or one of the things that really saved me when I was highly suicidal, to
Yeah.
trust my shadow. So,
Yeah. Wow. And I want to touch on something else as well. And I want to see if you can tell me the story, because I related to this hugely. And you talked about how you saw I think you saw something on TV about, and you referenced Mother Teresa and how these people were doing really great things. I think you're frozen again, but I'll keep going. And how you related to that. Can you maybe retell that in your words?
yeah. Oh gosh, I think I was like 7 years old or
Yeah.
something. And I mean, my parents love to watch the news. I never liked the news, even as a kid. I had to go somewhere else, but it was playing on the TV in the kitchen, and they were like talking about her and just showing her work. And I remember as a kid thinking like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Like, how do I get to do that? And like, I think my parents thought I was nuts, because it was this thing about like they pay a lot of money for our education, so we had to get like go in some kind of direction and be a professional with like diplomas and all these kinds of things. But yeah, I've always been so fascinated by her work. And I remember that moment as a kid, like, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do that. And in a way, I'm doing it, which I'm like, I'm so grateful that that little child had so much information at that moment, because I still like once in a while I do like donation based somewhat retreats, that goes to something else. And 10% of like any sessions that I do goes to a nonprofit organization in Las Vegas that they rescue dogs from Korea, from South Korea,
Oh,
from
wow.
animal farms.
Yep.
And so like there's something in me just to give. I just want to give more and more and more and help, anybody that I can help. Of course, I know I cannot help everyone. Not everyone is going to resonate with my work, but just be of guidance and help, be a beautiful mirror for somebody else, because that would have made a lot of difference in my life, in my journey. So I I strive to be the person that I wish I would have had when I was struggling. And now that I understand more of those struggles because of my story, it's much easier to guide others through that.
Yep. Yep. I just I love that. I love that story about
Thank you.
not, and I wonder how many people, because I've always had this feeling, like I've always known, I've always gravitated to more, if I didn't need money, what would I do? And wanting to do that regardless. And I mean, I jumped about a decade ago. I jumped on the entrepreneurial bandwagon. I'd been, when I was 14, basically my brother was the academic of the family, so I went into the family trade and left school early, and got into flooring. and it never resonated.
I lost you again.
Yeah, that's all right. Hang on. You got me? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, when I was young, my brother was the smart one. I was the hands-on one. And so I got pushed into the family trade, in
Mm,
flooring, and it just never resonated. But I always worked for myself. So then eventually I started to really see my discontent with life, and I
yeah.
started to look at entrepreneurship, and I tried thing after thing, and it just never worked. And I realize now, because it never touched that deeper
Mm,
note. There was this,
mm-hmm.
there was just that something that was missing, and I can't work for the exchange. I can't live for that financial exchange. There has to be that other
Yeah.
thing. And when I zeroed in back in October on what I wanted to do, but that it couldn't be about the money and there had to be that social enterprise, that was when the light came on and I went, oh, yeah.
Whoa.
And I
Yay.
got it. Yeah. So hearing you say that, like, completely
Yeah.
resonated. And I feel like that's the future. I feel that I feel in general business will end up there. It won't be done anything like it's done now, and it won't be profit driven. Leftover money
Mm-hmm.
will be done, will do good for the collective and
Yeah.
everyone, you know.
Yeah. It's really beautiful to begin to see that shift now. I mean,
Yeah.
I truly believe there's a reason why we incarnated at this moment in time to see
Mm.
everything that is happening in humanity,
Yeah.
but also to be that guiding light.
Mm.
And at the same time, the one that also, because there's like a really big separation at times, like the light and the dark is bad, just being the light, but
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, there's so much beauty in the dark too, and without the dark, we wouldn't have the light, and it's
Yeah.
all part of us anyway. So like finding the middle grounds, and I know that this is happening with a lot of us. And for us to do that work, we're also just holding such a big space for everybody else that will begin to do this work in some kind of way or another.
Yeah. I, there's nothing left to say. That's perfectly
Yeah.
perfectly articulated. And I mean, yeah, particularly in these times, like
Yeah.
there's that contrast. There's black and white, but there's not actually black and white. Like you say,
Hmm.
it's the middle ground.
Yeah.
It's that middle ground.
Sure.
And I was actually having a shower before, and that's where all the good thoughts come in. And I was thinking something. I can't remember what the train of thought was, but it was along those lines, because I always, there's a point where everything just, there's not good nor bad. Everything just is like, and yes, from here we perceive it as bad, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really not, because it's just the unfolding. It's just consciousness, the universe exploring itself.
Yeah, for sure. Which is something so beautiful, to be able to like
Mm,
witness ourselves growing and witness other people. But like to me, the most fascinating thing is to see my growth and to like remember how far I've come
mm,
and where do I come from. There's a lot of people that forget that somebody that puts a camera on and does a live video has a powerful story. We all have a
yeah,
powerful story, which is our medicine. And so like and sometimes people forget that I'm human.
yeah,
So like it's like no, I do have struggles too,
yeah,
but I have a lot of tools in my toolbox, and whenever
mm,
I don't have a tool, I reach out for help. But like there's so much beauty in witnessing our growth and witnessing, yeah, like you were saying, the consciousness coming through and remembering, going back into us, not me, not him, not her, like
yeah,
us, our story, and the power that we all have within.
yeah, yeah. And you refer to your humanness there. Do you ever do things and laugh at yourself? Like, kind of, you feel yourself kind of do, here's an example, right? I'll ask people who I talk to sometimes, what's the least spiritual thing you do? Because, like, we've all got things, right? Because we're not sitting around, or particularly me, like, and I embrace it. Like, I go into a gym. I was there this
Mhm.
morning. I got up at 6 o'clock and I went to the gym, and I threw around weights like a goon. but I don't care because it's all part of the experience. It's all spiritual.
Yeah.
It's all part of everything. But I'll ask people, what's the least spiritual thing you do? And some of them get really awkward and go, oh, I don't do anything because they're trying to live up to
Oh.
an image. But
Oh my gosh. I mean, honestly, like I will have to say that it's my temper. You
yeah,
know, like yes, I'm very balanced and I know how to go back into balance state, but sometimes like a volcano can still come through. You know, I'm a Leo, so I have so much energy inside,
mm-hmm.
and so like sometimes it's definitely my temper, but I love just being silly and making faces at
Yeah,
myself in the mirror and then laughing at myself. And I love this little guy, Zeus, that I
yeah,
just like, we
Zeus.
just play around. Yeah. And
Yeah,
he like shows me a different way of life. I when I love a show, like I can watch that show nonstop,
yeah,
you know. And so like, yeah. Oh, here's the one thing, because in another podcast, somebody asked me like, "Where's the last show that you binge watched in a way?" And it's not that like I've like sat like for days watching it, but it was Cobra Kai, you know. And then
yeah.
they're like, "Whoa, that is like the least like thing that I would think of," you know. It's something that my boyfriend and I really enjoy like watching. So yeah, I mean, there's so much. I believe there's so much yeah, the humanness that comes through, but in a way it's still like it's gotta balance your spirituality, or what we
Yeah,
call spiritual, you know, because I mean, yes, we're all spiritual beings, but we're also having a human experience, and part
absolutely.
of the human experience is to be a freaking human.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's something I say recently is that I'm not going to go to Hawaii to go and find an office block and sit in front of a computer all day and do work. I'm
Hmm.
going to Hawaii to do Hawaii. So right now I'm on Earth. I'm going to do Earth.
Mm.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm not worried
Yes.
about anything else. This is what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's where the real power is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
magic. Beautiful. Well, this was lovely. And
Yes.
I am so grateful for the work you do. Like I said, when I was sitting there yesterday listening to your podcast, cleaning up, doing my thing, I just felt like it was just this heart opening. Just listening to you
Mm,
talk, you know, I not only did I resonate with so much of what you said, but I can feel the genuineness. I can feel how real and authentic you are, and
thank
it's
you.
truly a gift. And I absolutely hope we get to do this again, and I will do everything I can to keep in touch with you.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just saying that um, I truly would like to do this again sometime.
Yes, for
Just
sure.
hang out, and I feel like, I feel like we'll keep in contact and that sort of thing, because I think there'll be some opportunities down the track to, obviously, where I can support what you're doing, and I know you're the type of person that supports what people are doing as well. But regardless, like I just, yeah, you're amazing, and I just
Thank you.
appreciate you, and this has been so much fun.
Yes, likewise. Thank you for having me here, and yeah, it's been so lovely just to chat and do this thing. I love to do it
Yeah,
again. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. And I don't know if Zeus is in the background, but bye, Zeus.
He's by my feet.
Having a snooze. It's a dog slot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, if anyone wants to connect with you, they can find all the links below. You're on Instagram,
Mhm.
Spotify, all that sort of stuff. Got an amazing podcast, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.